All right, hey, hey.
I'm Tim, and I am an alcoholic. You know, I'm not exactly sure, but I would consider this guy an urban cowboy. I met him when he first came in, and he looked like hell. But he's one hell of a guy, and I'm going to tell you what, I'm honored to be able to call him a friend. He's one of the more talented guys I've ever seen. He made me this cane. Just total freaked me out. I'm like, you know, made me cry. And this guy, you know, one of my favorite sayings, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path, engraved in it. And one of the truest statements ever done. You follow this path, you won't fail. And I'm real anxious to hear this lead coming up, and I appreciate being asked to do this because it is an honor. And I want to tell you what, I've seen him come a long ways. So with that, I'm going to give you this tall drink of water.
Gotta have my caffeine.
All right. Yeah, I'm nervous. My name's LJ, and I'm an alcoholic. Almost forgot the important part. My sponsor suggested that I pray to get us started because I'm big into praying. So for anybody who wants to join me, I'm going to say a quick prayer. Dear God, thank you for today. Thank you for my sobriety. God, I thank you for all the people in this room. I ask that you would guide my words and my thoughts. And God, if there's one thing I say tonight that reaches one person, it was worth being up here. Thank you for all that you do for us. Amen.
Amen.
So yeah, I'm super nervous and kind of shaky even, so I hope it's not too bad. I am not a good speaker. I spoke publicly quite a few times, but I'm always super nervous, and it usually goes away after the first minute or two. The good news is I know everybody in here pretty much. There's a couple new faces, but so it's not that bad, going to be that bad, I don't think. I'm not a good speaker. I probably am going to sound a lot like Forrest Gump tonight at some point or other. Probably going to get lost. I put down some notes, but I don't know how much I'm going to use them. Most of what I'm going to say tonight is stuff that I'm going to regurgitate. It's stuff that I've heard in these rooms, stuff I've heard my sponsor say, stuff that you guys have taught me, stuff I've read in the literature. I do use quite a bit of quotes when I talk because somebody's always said what I'm thinking better than I can say it. So, yeah. So anyway, if you've gone to meetings with me, you're probably not going to hear anything new. This is all the same stuff I share all the time. So, yeah. I was really nervous about coming tonight. Most of the things I'm going to say tonight, I've said before, like I just said, but there are some stuff about my story that I don't really share very often, not with many people. And I was nervous about sharing some of that stuff. And last night I was reading the big book, and I came across this in the big book, and it was helpful to me. It said, "We families of Alcoholics Anonymous keep few skeletons in the closet. Everyone knows about the other's alcoholic trouble." And you know, it came to me at the perfect time to hear that. You know, you guys are like family to me, and you know, the fact that you guys will know my troubles and some of the stuff I've been through is fine with me. So there's a couple things that I wanted to say to get started. I do talk about God a lot, and it's because God is the only reason I stay sober. My story does involve quite a bit of drugs, not just alcohol. I am a Christian. I'm going to try and stick to AA vernacular. But if I slip up, please don't crucify me. There was no pun intended there, but hey, that was cool, right? So anyway, if any of those things bother you or offend you, I apologize. If you think you want to leave now, go ahead. I won't have resentment against you. So anyway, so I'll begin with how it was. My favorite book starts off with "In the beginning,
And I believe that in the beginning, God had a plan for my life at the beginning of time, and I believe that his plan for me was to be right here where I'm standing now at this exact moment. The reading of acceptance says nothing, absolutely nothing happens in God's world by mistake. It blows my mind sometimes to think, there's on average 144,000 people die every year in the U.S. of drugs and alcohol. And I think, why did I get to live when all those people died? And I do believe it's because God has a plan for me, and it wasn't to go prematurely. I've said it in meetings plenty of times, so probably everybody's heard me say this, but I picture my recovery like this. All of us got in our cars tonight with the destination being the PRA, and it may have taken some of us longer to get here, depending on where we started. It may have, I'm sorry, I have to glance down for a second. The journey some of us arrived earlier, depending on when we got started, and it may have taken a little bit of extra time if we had to take a detour or took a wrong turn or whatever. But in recovery, I believe that we'll all arrive where we're supposed to, as long as we follow God and don't give up or turn around. So I guess I'll start with how my journey began. I grew up in a small town in southern Louisiana. I'm sure you guys could have probably guessed I'm not from here, but I was raised in a Christian home. My parents taught us about a God that is loving and forgiving and merciful, and we did not hear much about a vengeful or wrathful God. I've spent a large majority of my life seeking God, and from as early as I could remember, even at the worst points in my life, I still tried to seek him. I fail miserably even to this day. I fall short of the mark constantly, but I have my sights set on that what God expects of me, and the last 12 months, 14 months, I've tried very hard to do what he prompts me to do. Back to my childhood. Despite belonging to the Christian faith, my parents were very often very physically and emotionally abusive. And, from the time I was 4 till the time I moved out when I was 18, my dad beat me like a grown man. My first conscious memory of my mother is her shoving me in a cold shower and forcing me to stay there. And these things from an early age caused me to avoid people in general, to avoid everybody, and I would spend most of my time wandering around out in the woods behind the house with my pellet gun, and a little bit later in life I would escape by doing projects out in the garage, making stuff, and at some point I started turning to drugs and alcohol to hide from my problems, so in the early 90s we moved to LaPorte. We moved way out in the boonies in LaPorte. It was very rural where I grew up. But when we got here in Indiana, my parents kind of abandoned whatever spiritual beliefs they had, and things started getting worse. The abuse became the new normal, and it was tough. So when I was 9 years old, I experienced alcohol for the first time. My parents were at a family party, and they thought it'd be funny to feed me rum and cokes, and I thought it was awesome. I was happy, I was talkative, I was funny, I wanted to be around people. And even though I spent the entire night puking in the bathroom of that hotel room, I couldn't wait to do it again. I couldn't wait to get drunk again. I felt like, like I said, like all my troubles were gone. I didn't have to try to be sociable, and I really enjoyed it. So soon thereafter, my parents developed a very liberal policy on drinking in our household. As long as we drank at home, we were allowed to drink pretty much as we wanted. So I drank nearly every day out of the liquor cabinet in the kitchen. I'd get drunk, from the time I was probably 10 till, for the most of my life, I drank on a daily basis. Soon the liquor wasn't enough. I started like most people do. It was like, I started with pot, and then it was hallucinogens, and then it was pain pills, but soon it was like anything I get my hands on, meth and coke and crack, and I was drinking all the time on top of it. And by the time I was 16 years old, I was completely addicted to opiates. I was doing Oxycontin like I was Rush Limbaugh or something. I was doing a lot. It was around that time that I first realized, before I ever came to this program, I realized that I was powerless over drugs and alcohol. I was 16 years old, definitely hooked, and I knew that I didn't use and drink like other people did. I couldn't control how much I used or when I used. I remember going to bed many nights for many years thinking I did way too much. I'm not gonna wake up. And the messed up part about it was I was okay with that at that time, and I couldn't use like my friends. I couldn't use like anybody. I knew there was just never enough alcohol, never enough pills. I drink despite the consequences. I realized how powerless I was over the stuff, but it didn't stop me. That self-knowledge did not stop me from drinking or using for a very long time. Then when I was 18, on my 18th birthday, actually, Mom and Dad kicked me out of the house. And, initially I was like, man, this is cool. Like, no more authorities, don't have to deal with Mom and Dad beating on me. Awesome. But things got bad very quick. That same year I was in an accident that very nearly took my life, and I was in the hospital for months, and that didn't even help. For those months I remember I had a buddy, my buddy Dan, would sneak vodka into my hospital room in a water bottle, and I was still getting fed intravenously, on an IV, and I'd be drinking vodka in my hospital room. So it was a mess. And then when I got out, things got worse. They sent me out. It was before all the opioid epidemic stuff, whatever. And they sent me out with, a script of pain pills, like an endless script of pain pills. Anytime I wanted more, I just called the doctor, and I abused the hell out of them. And a little later that year, I was arrested for the first time. I was fueled on tequila and pain pills, and woke up in the infirmary at LaPorte County Jail. And I had charges for assault and battery on a police officer, amongst some other charges. And the judge let me plead to going to a residential rehab program. It was a long program, but I never finished it, and I was able to talk my way out of it, and the charges just all got dropped. And it was about that time I tried a 12-step program for the first time, and I did everything they told me to do except for stop drinking. I felt like I was just checking stuff off the list. They're like, sponsor, yeah, check. Conferences, check. Pray, check. Stop drinking. And I'm like, well, I don't know about that. I'm not ready for that. We'll just go with the other stuff. I'd hit the liquor store on the way home from meetings all the time. It was regular for me to do. So obviously that wasn't working for me. At that time, I wasn't ready for it. So I got arrested I'm sorry. So for the next, 6 years, it was the same things over and over and over. It was, the arrest, the psych ward visits, the jail stints, the rehabs, the wrecked vehicles, and to make matters more complicated, my oldest daughter was born when I was 19, and another one soon followed. My daughter Lily followed right after that, and I love them girls to death, and I would do anything for them, but it still couldn't stop me from using and drinking. Their mom left me. I was 24, and their mom, who was also an addict, split town and left me with the kids. And I was a mess. I was constantly strung out or drunk. And we were staying with my grandma. My grandpa had just passed, and we went to help her out. And I got a DUI driving my grandma to a doctor's appointment at 9 o'clock in the morning. Awesome. So I sat in jail. I have lost track of how many times I've been to rehab, how many times I've gone to jail, how many arrests I had, how much time I've spent in jail, how many psych wards I've been to. It's been pretty much the story of my life for a huge chunk of my life. Since I turned 18, it's been just over and over on repeat. So I sat in jail for, I think it was 6 weeks, and I realized at a certain point that I couldn't live like that, because I had to provide for my daughters, for one. I had, I wanted to be able to work, and I realized I needed help. What I was doing just wasn't working. So a pastor friend of mine, he had become my friend. He helped me when my grandpa was dying of cancer, and he became really close to me as I went through my struggles. And when I got out of jail, I was right back to drinking and using right off the bat. I think my first stop was the liquor store. But he kind of took me under his wing for a couple weeks, and it was obvious that I wasn't going to be able to stop. So he recommended this Christian rehab program that it had a halfway house, and I stayed there for about 18 months, and the church that ran the place was extremely fundamental. But I adapted to that lifestyle very quickly, because it was way better than the life I was living, and for the next 10 years, I managed to stay clean and sober, mainly on willpower, but for 10 years I stayed sober, and in that time life got good. I wasn't drinking and using, so life got good. I got married, got full legal custody of my 2 oldest daughters, had 2 more daughters, so for those of you who can't count, that's 4 beautiful daughters that I had. I climbed as high as I possibly could. I was a welder, pipe fitter, and I got as high in the company as you could possibly get without a college degree. And in that time, I bought a big, beautiful home. And actually, at one point in that period of time, I would go preach every Friday night to the men's home and to the homeless shelter. So life was good, but I don't think anything on the inside really changed. I was just, an alcoholic that wasn't drinking, and somewhere down along the road, I took control back from God. I was like, you know what, God, I got this. You take it easy. I'm gonna take control of this stuff. I'll do it good, but I've got this under control. And that pride, coupled by some legal allegations, took me down the same dark path that I'd already been down numerous times. I had a knee surgery. I got a script pain pills when I had the surgery, and it was right back. It was right back to where I was. The pills had to be offset with amphetamines. The amphetamines had to be offset with the Xanax. The Xanax, when it ran out, turned back into alcohol. And once I started drinking again, it was game over. Life crumbled again. The arrests started again. I lost a very, very, very amazing career once again. My marriage fell apart and ended. My relationships were all torn apart. Nobody in my family talked to me. I wasn't seeing the kids hardly ever, because my ex was so worried about where I was, about how much I was using and drinking. So I don't blame her, but I didn't get to see the kids, and that made it harder. And it was more, what do you say, Mike? Pitiful,
incomprehensible
demoralization. You got it. So more rehabs, more arrests, more trips to the psych ward, and I continued destroying my life. I kept thinking, okay, well, I've hit rock bottom. I'm going to change, and then I'd break out the pickaxe and jackhammer and dig the hole deeper. My dad, as horrible of a man as he was, used to say all the time to me, he said, the best way to get out of a hole is to stop digging. And, I think that's true. I think there's some wisdom there. So in the summer of 2021, I started trying again to get sober. I met Erin then, and that really changed my life. She was the first person in my life to really make me pursue sobriety. We were dating just for a few weeks, and she's like, why don't you go to a meeting? It would probably be a good idea since you're struggling. And and she was helpful, but the best support systems in the world don't mean shit when you're not ready to change. And I kept drinking, and in December, I wrecked my truck. December of 2021, I wrecked my truck. It was getting near Christmas, and life just completely went haywire. I showed up to court drunk, and got thrown in for contempt of court, thrown in jail for contempt of court. I got out, showed up to probation the next couple times drunk, and they put a warrant out for my arrest. But I locked myself in my apartment, pretty much wanting to drink myself to death. And I didn't leave, except I wasn't eating. I wasn't drinking any liquids besides booze. I was content dying there. On the last day I drank was January 2nd, in the evening of January 2nd of 2022. And the next morning at like 3 o'clock in the morning, apparently, I decided I was going to go get another fifth of vodka, and it was a snowstorm. I'm never going to forget my last drunk, because it was terrible. I was wandering through the snow. It had snowed a ton, and I fell on the road several times in front of a car, and she freaked out, got out and was like yelling to me, like, just stay there, I'm gonna call an ambulance. And I got up and made it down to where I bought my booze, and the cops showed up, and I fell on the ground and couldn't get back up. And I had the warrant and I had some felony charges that were pending from a fight I had gotten in the year before. And they took me to jail. And that started me on the path to recovery. Porter County Jail is the first rehab that actually did something for me. C.S. Lewis says that pain is God's megaphone, and it took a lot of pain and suffering for me to hear what God wanted me to hear. That it was time to quit. I feel like I've earned my seat at these tables, and I think about it like this sometimes. you know, I was a welder fabricator for years, and a good welder fabricator, I was not a good welder fabricator, I was okay, but a good welder fabricator can use heat and pressure to, you know, manipulate the steel to go exactly where he wants it to go. He can draw it to where he wants it to be. And I feel like God does that with us. You know, he in the form of pain and suffering, he uses heat and pressure to draw us to exactly where he wants us to be. And you know, at that point, I had so much pain and suffering in my life. I was ready. I sat in jail, like I said, for 4 months, and it took a few days for the fog to clear, and a couple weeks actually. And once it did, I found a big book there, and I started reading it nonstop. And I started rekindling that relationship with God, and I started writing out my steps. I still have them. They let me take the notebook that I had from jail, thankfully. So I still have the step work I did while I was in jail. And I got out in April, and the first thing I did was hit a meeting, and I've been hitting meetings very consistently since. You know, the most important thing in my life is staying sober, because when I start drinking and using, I lose everything. I've lost everything over and over and over, and God gives it back to me and I lose it again. So, you know, it's, you know, I started doing the things that were suggested. I started talking to my sponsor every day. I started reading the literature. I started calling numbers off the phone list. I started getting to be friends with guys around the tables. And, you know, I started doing some service work. And the more I put into it, the more 24 hours piled up. You know, you know, days turned into weeks, and so on and so forth. So why did AA work for me when the other programs I tried failed so bad? It's because this program is a program of action. This program teaches me to follow my higher power, you know, to have an actual I feel like spirituality is both developing a relationship with your higher power, but also trying to live out, for me, it's trying to live out the attributes which God has. You know, it's behaving in love, showing peace, mercy, kindness, you know, sacrificially giving yourself for others, you know, like give up your day to go, you know, see the guys at the prison, or give up time in the evenings to go to meetings. And so I feel like this program works for me because it teaches me how to not only how to behave and live, but how to seek after God. I'll give you guys another analogy, because that's the way my brain works. If anybody's been to my house in the summer, I will absolutely 100% take you, or without a doubt, always take you out into my garden to show you all the vegetables and fruit and all the other stuff that I plant out back. And it's really not that impressive, but it's important to me. You know, for my garden, the weeds choke out the vegetables, so you got to get rid of the weeds. And if I don't take care of the weeds, my stuff dies. So I've got to get rid of those weeds. If I just clip them off at the surface, get rid of what you see, nothing changes. They come right back. You know, it may be a day, it may be a week, but those weeds come back. And to get the weeds from coming back, you got to get to the roots. And I feel like that's what's different about this program. You know, my alcoholism is just like those weeds. You know, just because I get rid of what's on the surface, doesn't mean that it's not going to come back. You know, the alcohol is just what you see on the surface, but the problem is way deeper than that. You know, I'm sick, deep down sick, and alcohol is just a symptom of that illness. You know, so I feel like working the program helps me to get at those roots. You know, like every time I let a resentment go, the roots get worked at a little bit. And every time I work on a character defect, those roots get hit a little bit more. And you know, every time I put somebody else's needs before mine, those roots get hit a little bit more. You know, every time I share my experience, strength, and hope in a meeting, you know, I say what helped me. Those roots get hit a little bit more. And so far, the weed hasn't popped back up. You know, it's been 14 months or something like that, and you know, I'm still sober. But it's not just me being sober; it's my life is changing. So what's it like now that I'm sober? You know, I feel like the promises are being fulfilled every day. Like I have the freedom now to do everything in life I want to do. I'm not serving. Mike always says the master of alcohol. You know, alcohol was my master. I wasn't. You know, I don't have to do that anymore. I have freedom. I can see that the things that have happened to me in my life are part of God's plan. You know. Absolutely 100% my life is more serene and peaceful. I can see that the things that I used to try to forget, the things I regret, some of my experiences, you know, are what made me who I am now, and I don't regret them, and I try not to shut the door on them. That's hard for me. I mean, there's so much. I'm sure other people are like this, but I sit in bed some nights and just think, man, you did some awful stuff, dude. You know, but I don't have to do that anymore. You know, I stopped seeing myself as a victim. You know, like I said, I see my experiences as what made me who I am today, and I feel like God will use those experiences to help alcoholics who are still suffering. I always look for ways to bless other people, and I was not like that before, you know, and that's changed a lot in me. You know, my finances aren't easy right now by any means, but God takes care of me every day. I have a roof over my head. I have food. I'm warm. I have you know, God takes care of me. It doesn't matter how much money I'm making, you know, annually, or yeah, I'm always taken care of. You know, life isn't perfect. Since I got sober, there's been problems. I've had pain, you know, but I know now that I don't ever have to drink again if I don't want to. You know, that's up to me and how I choose to live my life. You know, my sponsor has to tell me all the time, dude, slow down. And it's because I'm a perfectionist, and I want everything to be perfect today. You know, I want to have all the stuff that I used to have, and I want to be making a couple $100,000 a year, and I want to have that big freaking diesel truck that I want. You know, like there's all these things that I want now. But there's another spot in the big book that really hit home with me. It says, though the old buildings will be replaced with far finer ones, the new structures will take years to be complete. And I mean, I think that's so true. I mean, like, I want it now, but I didn't destroy my life in one day or in 6 months. It took years, and building stuff up is going to take some time. You know, things have really improved since I got sober. You know, my relationships are all relatively healthy. You know, my relationships are healthy, and I have friends that are like friends, for real friends. You know, not just people that wanted to go out and cause trouble with me. And it's like I've got a group of legitimate friends sitting here in this room with me, and I don't feel like isolating anymore. I mean, for a large portion of my life, I wanted to be alone. I wanted to be out in the woods by myself, and didn't want to see anybody, didn't want to talk to anybody. Excuse me, I take a drink. Anyway, you know, I want to be around people now. I started my own business, and started messing with the idea of my own business last July or August, and because I'm sober, it's actually working out this time. You know, it's growing rapidly. Like I have trouble keeping up with it most days. I get to spend every single weekend with my 4 daughters. Every single weekend they come over and stay the night a couple nights, and you know, I'm clearing the wreckage of the past away. You know, when I got here, I had so many charges, so many legal issues that it wasn't funny. And just 2 weeks ago, I went before the judge that was trying me for multiple felony offenses. I think 4 felony offenses and 2 or 3 misdemeanors. And you know, there was a real answered prayer that happened. She dropped all the charges, you know, and that doesn't happen. And it's because of this program that she did it. She the prosecuting attorney did her little thing, and it's because of how hard I'm working a program. I mean, she pretty much said it from whatever you call the thing, the pulpit. What is the thing that a judge stands at? Not pulpit, that's what a priest stands at. The bench? All right, I was close. So anyway, she said that, you know, she was impressed with how my life has changed, and that was amazing. That, you know, the fact that I was looking at 6 years in prison, and it just went away, you know. And like I said, that the best part of the way I'm living now is I don't have to drink again. You know, I'd stopped drinking back in the day because I hated the consequences, but now I do it. I don't drink because I want to live a better life. I want to help others. I want to be there for my friends and family, and I can't do that when I'm drinking. You know, all I have to do is trust God, do the next right thing, listen to these simple suggestions the guys give me every night, and put it to work in my life, you know. So I'd like to close with one of my favorite quotes. It is, "There is no temptation that has taken you, but that which is common to man. But God is faithful and will not tempt you above what you can handle, but will with temptation always create a way to escape, that you might be able to bear it." So that's pretty much all I have to say. Or I'd say, like Forrest Gump, that's all I got to say about that. That's it, I'm done.